peace, tranquility, a true brotherhood of Black, Latino, Asian American, American Indian, Pacific Islander, and white men and women, freedom from hunger, from oppression of all people, and from sickness, the freedom to choose our own destinies. We reaffirm our commitment to our simple Rotary four-way test for all we do and support. Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Would it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all? We reaffirm our commitment to high ethics in all we do, and we give thanks for all the blessings, opportunities, and responsibilities that befall us as Rotarians. We continue in this new millennium with optimism, renewed energy, and a commitment to service to you and to our fellow men and women. Please, Lord of the universe, help us to serve. Amen.
And here's our pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, John Wayne, for making our meeting today. Much appreciated. Visiting Rotarians so far, there's only one person who's admitting it. There we go. A second. Sandy Forrester, past district governor, Rotary Club of Dallas Uptown, and Bill Wallace, guest of Jim Struble. Welcome, guests. Glad you're here today. We have something to celebrate. Greg Wood, past member of our club, Greg Wood, and Mike Bell of McKinney. Before we get to birthdays, there is an item I'd like to mention for celebrations. If you like our programming, please give a big thank you to our programming chairs, Jim Taylor and Susie Randall. Thank you so much. You and your committee have done an excellent job so far this year, and I'm looking forward to the rest of the year. Thank you so much for your effort. Really appreciate it. Birthdays to celebrate. For September 3rd, Charlie Meyer. September 5th, Lawrence Whaley. September 6th, Michael Hall and Liz Oliphant. We have Steve Penner and Bill Shattuck shown, along with Thomas Meyer. In keeping with our club's tradition, all members are encouraged to contribute to our club's foundation on their birthday. Your contributions help fund our service projects. Our goal is to have 100% participation, which leads to qualification as a Price Cross partner. As all of you members know, Price Cross was the founder of Rotary Club of Dallas over 100 years ago. In introducing today's Backpage Advertiser, one of the fundamental tenets of Rotary is to encourage and foster high ethical standards in business. As you saw at the beginning of the meeting and will at the end, members that support both those standards and the Rotary Club of Dallas. Our featured Backpage Advertiser today is Bill Dendy. Bill, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, and I'm grateful to be here, and I'm grateful, Sandy, for you to be with us, and others that were very inspirational in my Rotary life. I'll tell you, it's been a joy to serve in the Rotary Club of Dallas, and having served as a board of directors for 3 years and on the foundation board and serving 3 out of the 4 avenues of service, it has been a wonderful joy to give back to our organization. But I tell you, one of my greatest joys was the year I spent as governor of our district. And during that District 5810 governor year, we had some extraordinary good things happen. The first thing was the membership grew for the year, probably for the first time in 15 years. So I didn't know all the data going back, but we had positive growth, and we got the membership award for our whole zone because we had the top membership growth. Being positive is all by itself a big win, but to be the highest positive number of the zone was a big deal. In addition, that year we had giant increases in foundation giving. And foundation giving, the annual giving increased from 300,000 to 360. The overall giving over $1 million increase. That bottom line track. Of course, endowment giving, we were fortunate enough to have somebody pass away, which I guess is not a good thing, but somebody passed away who thought about giving to the Rotary Foundation as part of their bequests and part of their, and I know that that's a great thing that all of us have an opportunity to do going forward as we rewrite our wills and to consider our needs for our family and others, to remember when we give to the church to also give to Rotary. In addition, we received a lot of recognition for our public image, and I don't know if that's the next slide up here, but we had engagement. We had giant engagement. The governor installation had all the presidents engaged. John Jerm, the Rotary president, came. The international convention had over 100 of us go see it. The district conference cruise had over 300. Foundation gala, the major donor recognition dinner. All this was positive, and we received the Zone Public Image Award because we were on radio, television, and every place, and I loved it. Now, I say it was important to have people like Bill Slicker on board because Bill worked with me in creating our overall concept for the year. And it's a concept that I know it's not new, it's not repeated. It's the next slide. And that is the idea that you don't just do one thing, you do multiple things and they all take care of each other. It's not just one thing, but if you do them all well, you get magnification in every one of those things. And so membership leads to more giving, which leads to more service projects, which leads to a good image in the public, which leads to more members, which leads to more giving, and it just magnifies. So you can't just do one thing, but in the middle of it all, we got to remember to have fun. Now, how does that translate into my business? Well, 28 years ago, I took on the challenge of being a financial advisor. And y'all make fun of my having the law degree and the CPA and the CFP and the MBA, but it's the same concept on the next slide, that if you integrate all these things which are different into one focused area, you get magnifications you cannot foresee. And others just, they're like, what? How did that happen? It's not one thing. It's doing all the things cohesively together that leads to that growth. And I can't thank Sandy Forrester and Bill Slicker enough for all their support during that year, and all y'all who did it because of membership growth. A lot of it came right out of the Rotary Club of Dallas. God bless you. It's an honor to be serving our club and being working with such a fine group of people.
Thank you, Bill, for that high energy touting of your excellent leadership. Really appreciate you, really appreciate your membership in our club and having led our district that year. Thank you so much. And if you need a financial advisor, Bill's the one to go to, so check with Bill. I'd like to introduce our chair of the day, Jim Struble. Jim has been a member of the Rotary Club for more than 50 years. During that time, he served in many ways. He helped found and was a president of the Rotary Townhouse. He's one of the founders of our Camp Enterprise, a founder of the Salute to America's Veterans event, a founder of the Backpage Network, chairman of our Centennial Committee, past president of the club. Jim is the president of the commercial real estate firm Jim Struble Realty, LLC. Jim and Woo Woo, his wife of 54 years, have 2 children, 4 grandchildren, and live in Fairview, Texas. Jim, welcome as chair of the day. We may need to unmute Jim. Let's see if I can do that. Hold on. We're having trouble. There we go.
Tell Jim to hold the space bar down.
Yeah, Jim, you're still. Yeah, if you hold the space bar down while you talk the whole time, for some reason we can't unmute you. Still can't hear you. Sorry, Jim, we still can't. Jim, we can't hear you.
Jim, just give it a second. I'm trying.
Yeah, I don't know why.
There you are. There you go. There you go.
Okay, sorry, Jim.
Thank you, President Jim. My fellow Rotarians and guests, it's a great day to be a Rotarian. I'd like to begin with a joke, but today I'm going to tell you a true story. In 2005, our past president, Neil Resnick, recommended that we ask Dr. Kent Keith to speak to the club, and we scheduled him to speak on December 7th, 2005. He traveled to Dallas at his own expense. On the day of the meeting, Dallas recorded a record snowfall. You guessed it, the meeting was canceled. However, 10 members weathered the storm and went to the Addison Marriott Hotel where he was staying, and over lunch heard his memorable, impactful message, followed by a Q&A. Fast forward 15 years. Today, he is finally our speaker. Well, just who is Kent Keith? Well, first, he's a member of the Rotary Club of Honolulu Sunrise and a Rotarian of 29 years. He served as an attorney, Hawaii government official, high-tech park developer, YMCA executive, full-time author, president of 2 private universities, and CEO of 2 nonprofit organizations. This Rhodes Scholar earned a BA from Harvard, an MA from Oxford, the certificate in Japanese from Waseda University in Tokyo, a JD from the University of Hawaii, and a doctor's in higher education from the University of Southern California. Dr. Keith has given more than 1,000 speeches and workshops. Some 50 of those speeches were given at Rotary meetings, district conferences, and PETS. He's appeared on more than 100 TV and radio programs. Kent is known throughout the world as the author of The Paradoxical Commandments and as a leader in the servant leadership movement. More than 250,000 copies of his books have been purchased. He and his wife, Elizabeth Missio Keith, have celebrated 44 years of marriage together. They have 3 grown children. While our much loved in-person meetings have been replaced by Zoom meetings, technology of Zoom can provide opportunities, and this is one. Today, through the magic of Zoom, Dr. Keith will be speaking to us from his home in Honolulu, Hawaii. His topic, servant leadership. Please give him a warm virtual Rotary welcome. Aloha, Dr. Keith. The Zoom is yours.
Thank you. Thanks, Jim, for your introduction. Aloha, everybody. It's really a pleasure to be with you today. I hope that you're safe and healthy during these very challenging times. I do bring you greetings from the Rotary Club of Honolulu Sunrise. We're a small club that meets on Monday mornings at 7:15, a breakfast club. So today I'd like to talk about something I think is very important and very Rotarian, and that's servant leadership. It's a great way to live the Rotary motto of service above self. The idea that leaders should serve others is an idea that goes back thousands of years and can be found in a number of traditions. But there's a modern servant leadership movement. It was launched in the United States in 1970 by Robert K. Greenleaf, who coined the words servant leader and servant leadership in his classic essay, The Servant as Leader. The idea had been around for some time, but he was the first to actually coin those words. Greenleaf was born and raised in Indiana. He worked for AT&T for 38 years, from 1926 to 1964. During those years, AT&T was either the largest or one of the largest corporations in the world. They had 1 million employees around the world. And Greenleaf started literally at the bottom. He started by digging holes for telephone poles. Decided that wasn't as exciting as it might have been, so he continued to move up through the organization and eventually became the director of management research. So it was his job to educate and train the leaders and managers of one of the world's largest corporations. The idea was to make them as effective as possible. Now, Greenleaf noticed that there were leaders who were focused on acquiring power and wealth, pretty much focused on themselves. And then there were leaders who were focused really on serving others, on serving their colleagues and their customers. After 38 years of experience in the corporation, training and watching, Greenleaf concluded that the most effective leaders were those who were focused on serving others. Greenleaf said that servant leadership starts with the desire to serve, not the desire to lead. Of course, there are many ways to serve. When a person with the desire to serve sees the opportunity to serve by leading, then that person accepts leadership responsibilities and becomes a servant leader. Greenleaf really emphasized the importance of growing people. He said it was a triple win. And that's because when people grow, it's good for them as individuals. They benefit personally. But as their capacity grows, of course, the capacity of their organization grows. And when the capacity of their organization grows, it can do things better or do things it was never able to do before. So individuals benefit, the organization benefits, and the people the organization serves also benefit. That's the triple win. So how do we know if a servant leadership is doing a good job? Well, Greenleaf said the best test was this: do those served grow as persons? Do they, while being served, become healthier, wiser, freer, more autonomous, more likely themselves to become servants? And finally, what is the effect on the least privileged in society? Will they benefit or at least not be further deprived? You know, the ultimate goal for Greenleaf was to make the world a better place. His idea was that servant leaders would help their organizations to become servant institutions, and those servant institutions would truly serve their employees, their customers, their business partners, creditors, members, shareholders, communities, society as a whole. And as a result, the quality of our lives would improve and the world would be a better place for everyone. My experience is that there are two major models or ideas or paradigms about leadership in the world. The dominant model that you find everywhere is what I call the power model. So according to the power model, leadership is about acquiring and wielding personal power. The other model is what I call the service model. The service model is about making a difference in the lives of others. Servant leaders live the service model of leadership. So a servant leader doesn't ask, how can I get power? How can I make people do things? The servant leader asks, what do people need? How can I help them to get it? What does my organization need to do? How can I help my organization to do it? So rather than embarking on a quest for personal power, the servant leader embarks upon a quest to identify and meet the needs of others. That's the mission of the servant leader, to identify and meet the needs of others. You know, basically, it's about paying attention. It's about paying attention to your colleagues and helping them to get what they need to perform at their highest levels. It's about paying attention to your customers and helping them to get what they need so they are happy and your business will be successful. Servant leadership is not soft. Servant leaders can make hard decisions whenever necessary in order to serve others. And servant leaders can exercise power. But usually when they exercise power, they exercise it with others, not over others. And they exercise it on behalf of others, not for their own personal benefit. To a servant leader, power is only a tool, and usually not the most important tool. It's only a means and not an end. Well, servant leaders can be anybody, really. Political leaders, business leaders, nonprofit leaders, coaches, friends, neighbors. Servant leaders do most of the things that other leaders do. They articulate a vision, they manage, they communicate, and so forth. What sets servant leaders apart from other leaders is that they are focused on others, not just themselves, and they are motivated to make life better for others, not just themselves. So that difference in focus and motivation is what I think really distinguishes them, regardless of their titles or their roles or their positions. You know where I see this difference most often? It's in the kinds of questions people ask when they're making decisions on a daily basis. So a power-oriented leader who sits down to make a decision asks a different set of questions than a servant leader. A power-oriented leader will ask questions like this: what decision will enhance my power? What decision will make me look good? What decision will be a great way to get ahead of my chief rival? What decision will improve my relationship with my boss? What decision will position me better for my next promotion? So these are all power-oriented questions about the leader who's making the decision. Well, a servant leader asks a different set of questions. A servant leader asks, what are the most important needs that we should be addressing? If we address this need, are we going to harm someone? If harm is likely, is there a way we can mitigate it? What decision would be most consistent with the mission and values and goals of my organization? What decision would best serve our customers? Those are really different kinds of questions. They're not about the leader, they're about the organization and the people it serves. And this is where I think the Rotary four-way test fits so perfectly. The questions asked in the four-way test are the questions that servant leaders should ask and do ask. You notice they're not questions about power. They're questions about how we treat other people, how we relate to them. Are we truthful with them? Are we being fair to them? Are we building good relationships with them? Are we sharing the benefits? Are we concerned that it's beneficial to all concerned? So those are the right questions for servant leaders. Now, when you ask these different sets of questions, of course, you get different answers. And over time, the power-oriented leader and the servant leader move in different directions. The power-oriented leader moves toward getting whatever he or she wants personally, while the servant leader moves toward getting the things that other people need. And that's a big difference. You know, I love the fact that the idea of servant leadership grew out of Robert Greenleaf's experience in a large competitive for-profit business. It didn't come out of a think tank. It came out of a daily experience in a big company. He was making a practical observation about what worked best for his business. He knew that what worked best was servant leadership. For centuries, servant leaders have provided anecdotal evidence of the effectiveness of servant leadership. We know that servant leadership principles are being implemented in the public, private, academic, military, and nonprofit sectors. Of course, every organization has its own culture, and so it applies servant leadership principles in its own way. We know that for-profit companies have implemented servant leadership principles and have been financially successful. Many have been on the Fortune magazine list of the 100 best companies to work for in America. That list includes Starbucks, the Container Store, Aflac, Synovus Financial, and both Southwest Airlines and TD Industries headquartered right there in Dallas. It surprises some people, but there are military leaders who promote servant leadership. They're focused on taking care of their troops. Well, about 12 years ago, leadership scholars began to conduct empirically rigorous studies of servant leadership in the workplace, and the results have been very positive. For example, research has shown that servant leaders facilitate effective teamwork, and that's certainly important. Servant leadership may enhance both job performance and commitment to the organization. That's really good. Servant leaders may inspire followers to serve the community in which the organization is embedded. Sounds sort of Rotarian, doesn't it? Research has revealed that employees of servant leaders are more helping and more creative than those working with leaders who scored lower on servant leadership. Servant leadership has been shown to be positively related to employee job satisfaction. You've got good employees, you want them to be satisfied, you want to keep them. Well, those were all sort of workplace unit studies, but then back in 2012, Dr. Suzanne Peterson and her colleagues went to Silicon Valley and they interviewed 126 CEOs of high-tech companies there. And they interviewed them at great length. And after the interviews, they categorized them as founders, narcissists, who would have thought, and servant leaders. They found a positive relationship between servant leadership and firm performance. Companies led by servant leaders generated better financial results than companies led by founders or narcissists. The researchers said that these CEOs could improve their firm's performance if they adopted more inclusive forms of leadership, such as servant leadership, that take into account a broader number of stakeholders and are more other focused. There are studies now being prepared for publication in academic journals that conclude that servant leadership is good for all stakeholders, including shareholders, because servant leadership increases the profitability of for-profit corporations. Dr. Bob Leiden, a professor of management at the University of Illinois at Chicago, one of the world's leaders in servant leadership research, will be publishing research in the coming months that he and his team conducted in South Korea. The study showed that as servant leadership goes up, profits go up. Other scholars have seen similar results in their research on businesses here in the United States, and that will be published in the coming months as well. So we've got anecdotal evidence, we've got some empirical research that make it clear that servant leadership works. So why does it work? Well, frankly, why wouldn't it work? I mean, just think about it. Servant leaders identify and meet the needs of others. They identify and meet the needs of their colleagues so they can perform at their highest levels. They identify and meet the needs of their customers so they will be truly served. Colleagues perform well, customers get what they need. I mean, why wouldn't that work? When you think about it, it's pretty simple. Of course, there are specific leadership practices that help servant leaders to be effective. In my own writing and speaking, I talk about 7. I talk about self-awareness, listening, changing the pyramid, developing your colleagues, coaching, not controlling, unleashing the energy and intelligence of others, and foresight. So those are 7 practices that I consider to be key practices. But beyond that, you know, there's some really foundational ideas, some attitudes and practices that I really think help servant leaders to be effective. And I'd like to talk about 3 of them. They aren't discussed very often. First, servant leaders have positive assumptions about people in the workplace, and they draw out their best. Second, servant leaders go beyond extrinsic motivation to emphasize intrinsic motivation, which supports higher levels of performance. And third, servant leaders promote meaning at work, and that's a very important intrinsic motivator. So I see these 3 attitudes or practices as important foundations for success, and I'd like to tell you a little bit about each of these 3 ideas. First, let's talk about Theory X and Theory Y. Many years ago, Douglas McGregor was a professor of management at MIT. In 1960, he published his classic book, The Human Side of Enterprise, a book that I highly recommend. It's as fresh today as the day it was first published. McGregor noticed that our assumptions about people affect how we try to lead them. So he coined Theory X and Theory Y to describe 2 sets of assumptions about people in the workplace. Theory X assumptions are that most people dislike work and will avoid it if possible. Because they don't like work, most people must be coerced, controlled, or threatened to get them to work toward the achievement of organizational objectives. Most people want to be directed and they want to avoid responsibility. They have little ambition. They just want to be secure. So those are Theory X assumptions about people in the workplace. Theory Y assumptions are very different. Theory Y assumptions are that work is as natural as play or rest. It's something natural to us human beings. The threat of punishment's not the only way to get people to work. People will exercise self-direction and self-control in working toward organizational objectives when they're committed to them. And commitment to those objectives it depends upon the rewards that are associated with their achievement, but those rewards can be intangible. It's not just about money or material rewards. Most people learn not only to accept, but to seek responsibility. Finally, a lot of people have the capacity to exercise a relatively high degree of imagination, ingenuity, and creativity in solving organizational problems. So those are Theory Y assumptions. Servant leadership works well because servant leaders have Theory Y assumptions about people at work. They respect their colleagues, they believe in their potential, they help them to contribute their best work. Of course, if a colleague cannot or will not perform, that colleague will have to find happiness elsewhere. But servant leaders begin with Theory Y assumptions and they work hard to draw out the best in their colleagues. So that's Theory X and Theory Y. Another reason that servant leadership works so well is that servant leaders focus on intrinsic motivation. People who are intrinsically motivated do perform better than those who are extrinsically motivated. So we all know the difference between these 2. Extrinsic motivation is about what you have to do, and intrinsic motivation is about what you want to do. When it's extrinsic, the task just needs to be done. I mean, it's not fun, it's not interesting, it's not fulfilling or meaningful. So managers offer incentives or even threats of punishment to get people to do it. They tell people if you do this, then you'll get that. And that is a reward that's not related to the work itself. Well, we know intrinsic motivation is the opposite. It's about what people want to do, not what you have to do. People are intrinsically motivated when they do something because it is fun or interesting or fulfilling or meaningful. When you're intrinsically motivated, the work itself is your reward. One of the most read articles in the entire history of the Harvard Business Review was an article by Frederick Hertzberg, published back in 1968, titled One more time, how do you motivate employees? Hertzberg argued that some factors are hygiene factors and others are intrinsic motivators. Hygiene factors are almost all extrinsic. They're things that surround a person's life and work. Company policy and administration, supervision, relationship with a supervisor, work conditions, salary, relationships with peers, personal life, relationships with subordinates, status, security. These factors are the primary cause of extreme dissatisfaction on the job. Employers need to get these factors right so that employees will not be dissatisfied. However, more and better hygiene factors will not produce extreme satisfaction. Only intrinsic motivators will do that. Those intrinsic motivators include achievement, recognition, the work itself, responsibility, advancement, and growth. The hygiene factors and intrinsic motivators are not the opposite of each other. They represent different human needs. They are both important. However, if you want high levels of performance, your colleagues need to be intrinsically motivated. So in his research, Dr. Kenneth W. Thomas, he and his colleagues spent 16 years researching intrinsic motivation at work. And they identified a sense of meaning as an important intrinsic motivator. Meaning at work turns out to be a huge bottom line issue that gets comparatively little attention. Well, I think common sense tells us that if you find meaning in your work and you're intrinsically motivated, you'll be able to do more, you'll do it better, and you'll do it for longer. What's nice when a scholar comes along and proves something that seems to be common sense, and that's what Dr. Adam Grant has done for us. Dr. Adam Grant's a professor at the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania. He explored this idea in his research. He separated what he called pro-social motivation from intrinsic motivation to see what their effects might be on each other. He defined pro-social motivation as the desire to benefit or help others, to serve a greater purpose. He said that intrinsic motivation comes from interest in the work or the enjoyment of doing the work itself. So he went into the workplace. He studied 140 workers at a telephone call center and 58 employees at a fire department. He focused on the issues of persistence, performance, and productivity. Those are all desirable things. What Grant concluded was that employees display higher levels of persistence, performance, and productivity when they experience pro-social motivation and intrinsic motivation together. And that matches what Greenleaf said about servant leadership. Greenleaf said that servant leadership starts with a desire to serve, to benefit others, and that's the pro-social motivation. Greenleaf also emphasized growth and meaning, and that's the intrinsic motivation. So when you put the two together, you get the result that Grant showed in his research: higher levels of persistence, performance, and productivity. Well, servant leaders know that meaning is an intrinsic motivator, so they do their best to enhance meaning at work. Meaning was central to Greenleaf's business ethic. He said the work exists for the person as much as the person exists for the work. To put it another way, the business exists as much to provide meaningful work to the person as it exists to provide a product or service to the customer. This business ethic turns out to be very practical in terms of employee performance, commitment, and satisfaction. Well, so how important is meaning at work? Well, Catherine Bailey and Adrian Madden interviewed 135 people in the United Kingdom who work in a variety of occupations. They published their results in the MIT Sloan Management Review. Their article was titled, "What Makes Work Meaningful or Meaningless?" They said that the research shows that meaningfulness is more important to employees than any other aspect of work. I like to repeat that. Research shows that meaningfulness is more important to employees than any other aspect of work. It's more important to employees than pay and rewards, opportunities for promotion, or working conditions. So this is not just some kind of warm and fuzzy thing. The researchers agreed with Grant's findings. They said meaningful work can be highly motivational, leading to improved employee performance, commitment, and satisfaction. Those are things we want to promote. Improved performance, commitment, and satisfaction. Those are things that affect the bottom line. Because meaning is so important, servant leaders do whatever they can to create an environment in which meaning is enhanced for their colleagues. Servant leaders find meaning in the work of others. They share that meaning with them. They become interpreters of meaning for them. And they'll even seek to redesign work to make it more meaningful, usually to connect it more often with the people who benefit from their work. So one leader who focused on purpose and meaning as a way of lifting her colleagues in her company was Cheryl Batchelder. Batchelder was the CEO of Popeye's Louisiana Kitchen from 2007 to 2017. The restaurant chain had $2.4 billion in sales, 2,187 restaurants in 27 countries. Sales and profits had been declining for years. Cheryl was actually on the board. Finally, the board asked her if she would step in. She had a strong background in the food business. So she stepped in and she turned it around. 6 years after Batchelder assumed leadership, sales had climbed 25%. Market share had grown from 14 to 21%. Profitability was up by 40%, and the stock price was up 450%. So it was a pretty dramatic improvement. In her book, Dare to Serve, Batchelder said that one important step she took was to invite the company's leaders to develop a personal purpose that gave meaning to their work. She said it was the leader's responsibility to bring purpose and meaning to the work of the organization. Popeyes conducted workshops that took team members through several exercises regarding their life experiences, their values, their strengths, and their action plans. Batchelder said that the leaders at Popeyes who had an action plan for their personal purpose were having more impact on the business. She concluded that personal purpose leads to sustained superior performance. So the modern servant leadership movement was launched by a businessman who concluded that servant leaders were more effective and got better business results than power-oriented leaders. We have anecdotal evidence and empirical research that demonstrate that servant leadership works well for all stakeholders. There are key practices that help servant leaders to be effective. Servant leaders also hold theory Y assumptions, promote intrinsic motivation, and enhance the meaning and purpose that help people to perform at their highest levels. So I'd like to say in closing that I think servant leadership is what most of us would just call good leadership. It's just good leadership. I believe we need many, many more servant leaders in our organizations and communities. We'll have more servant leaders if we establish the service model as the accepted standard of leadership. We'll have more servant leaders if we teach our young people about the service model. And we'll have more servant leaders if we continue to demonstrate the service model in each of our own lives. That, after all, is at the core of the Rotary tradition. Our commitment to service can assure a strong future for our families, our communities, and the nation we love. Thank you.
Thank you, Kent. Excellent talk today. I must tell you that I think you've just increased my reading load by about 6 months with all the authors and articles and books that you've mentioned. So it looks like I've got a lot of reading to do, and I really do appreciate that. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
In recognition and appreciation of your presentation today, we've given a donation towards a longtime Rotary International initiative to rid the world of polio forever. End polio now, as well as to educate and equip communities to stop other diseases and expand access to health care. This donation will forever change the lives of many, many people. You can visit endpolio.org to learn more.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Excellent talk. Next, we have Charles. We're gonna let Charles Ashcraft talk a little bit about our Salute to American Veterans event. Charles, you have the floor. We're having a little trouble unmuting. So we still don't hear Charles.
How's that?
There we go. I hear you now.
Okay, thank you. Jim, thank you. And I'm sorry we didn't have a chance to respond a couple of weeks ago when you recognized the team from SAV 2019 for recognition they receive from the district. And when Dr. Keith was talking about servant leadership just a while ago, I have to tell you, every member of that team and every member I know of our Rotary Club are what I consider servant leaders in their community. So we are proud to receive the award of the Governor's Special Merit Award for SAB 2019. And one of the things we didn't have a chance to do at that time was to give a shout out to the past president, Charles Dowden. I think Charles is with us today. And you can see Charles standing there with the Admiral in 2019. And we really appreciate what Charles did. He took the extra initiative of submitting SAB 2019 to the district for consideration. So Charles, thank you very much. We'd also like to give a shout out to past District Governor Beverly Groden, excuse me, for giving us the recognition. But I think her comment and her write-up about giving us the award and stating that SAB 2019 is the epitome of a service project. And I think, as Bill said earlier in his background advertising, any program, service program, you've got to hit about every avenue that you can, where it's people, community, you name it. So we are very proud of the award, and we really look at it as a award to our veterans, to our men and women in uniform, and we are very appreciative. If you haven't heard, before I move into 2020, we just made a presentation via letter to our two nonprofits, the USO and the George W. Bush Service Initiative. We gave them each a check for $25,500. And year to date, through SAB 2019, we have donated over $550,000 in funds raised. And this is not from the foundation. These are funds raised by the teams for our two organizations. So quite an accomplishment. Now let's get on with 2020. First of all, we're very thankful to the Perot Foundation. If you haven't heard, the Perot Foundation gave us another or made a commitment, I should say, for $100,000. They've given us $25,000 for 2020. We've got $75,000 for the next 3 years, 2021 through 2023. And we really owe a special thank you also to Ben Casey. Ben, I know you're in the audience today because Ben has been our go-to person on keeping that relationship going. We were supposed to have, if you hadn't heard, Mr. Ross Perot Jr. as our keynote speaker this year. But due to the COVID-19, we are working on moving him to 2021. We are having our event on November the 11th. We will have that posted on the website anytime. It will be both virtual and in person, and that's really according to what the guidelines are going to be for the Rotary Club protocol. Our keynote speaker, you may know the two presidents there, 43 and 41, but the other guy is Sergeant Mike Elliott. Mike is a U.S. Army veteran. He spent his last 10 years in the Army as a part of the parachute team, the Golden Knights. He has over 15,000 free fall jumps, 5,000 tandem jumps, and I'm sure you've all heard 3 of those jumps were with President 41, George H.W. Bush. So he will be our keynote speaker. We don't know if he's going to be in Carolina or in Dallas. We're working on that. And one of the things we made a decision on early in the year was, due to the COVID-19, we're not going to go out and push our sponsors for sponsorships. We're going to ask them for donations. We know they've had some challenges, but we think some of them will step up and give some donations. We will be asking our Rotarians for donations, but overall, we're not pushing big sponsorships. Now, here's our big challenge, and we're going to need your help. We're going to target 200 plus Zoom members for that event. We're going to reach out to various veterans organizations. We're going to reach out to Happy Warriors, the Air Power Foundation, and Mike alone has 48,000 followers in his group called the All Veterans Group. So all in all, we've taken on a challenge. We think it's a good challenge. When we first started planning this event, the easy thing was to say, let's skip SAV 2020. And when you skip something, you lose a lot of momentum. But most importantly, during all the wars we've had, our veterans didn't say, hey, I'm gonna give up and go home. And on their behalf, we can't give up this year. So hopefully we can do 200 plus Zoom attendees. So we ask you to stay tuned. Please mark your calendar for SAV 2020, November 11th, as it is a Wednesday. And once we finalize, we move more into our plan, we'll keep you posted. And think about what veteran you can invite to participate in a Zoom meeting. Jim, thank you very much for the time, and Rotarians, we appreciate all of your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Charles, for talking about one of our premier programs. It's really an excellent event. I'm looking forward to what we're going to be doing this year. Even though it's going to look different, I think it's going to be fabulous.
We're going to enjoy it. Thank you.
Yeah. Rotary feeds the need. This is another Charles Ashcraft idea here. He proposed that we take our lunch money that we aren't spending at lunchtime and instead donate it to local charities, local first responders. So far, we have collected and donated about $12,000 to local responders. This is a great program. If you're able to do it, take some of that lunch money and donate it to this cause. And thank you for those who already have. Following today's meeting, there will be a foundation board meeting. So board members, please attend. Anyone who's interested, the meeting is open to anyone who would like to attend. Let's talk about next week. Next week, because of Labor Day, we're not having a meeting. You can show up here, but you'll probably be the only person here. So we're gonna skip a week. On September 17th, we have a happy hour scheduled. This will be both live at Seasons 52 in North Park Mall and via Zoom. So choose the avenue you'd like to participate. On September 16th, we're going to have our first in-person meeting since about March. The district governor is going to be visiting our club, and we're working to have a socially distanced, safe meeting at the Park City Club on September 16th. Those of you who feel comfortable being in meeting in person, please meet us there. And now, to close our meeting, if you'll recite along with me, of the things we think, say, or do, is it the truth? Second, is it fair to all concerned? Third, will it build goodwill and better friendships? Fourth, will it be beneficial to all concerned? Fifth, is it fun?
Is it fun?
Thank you all for joining us today. Stay safe.
Thank you all.
Thank
Great
you.
program. Thank you, Dr. Keith.
Awesome.
Thank you, everybody.
Hi, Bill Wallace. Glad you could join us today.
Glad to be here. Been a long time. You all have a great day.
You as well.
Bye.
Dr. Keith?
Oh, he may have left.
I think he just bugged out, Jim.
Well, too bad we didn't give him a chance to answer questions.
He's headed out to grab his surfboard and catch a few waves here for it.
Yeah, Jim, that was my fault. I apologize.
Actually, he's having breakfast. What is it, like 6:30 in the morning there? It's almost 7.
Right.
Well, he's in a Sunrise Rotary Club, so I'm sure he's used to that, right?
Well, there's 6 hours difference, 6 or 7 hours between here and Hawaii. Good program today. Program team, Jim.
Jim and Susie.
Somebody just gave me the book by Robert Greenleaf on the servant as leader. So now I'm really motivated to read it. Looking forward to it. So big fun.
Yep. Yep, Jim Struble, thanks for getting us the speaker.
Pardon?
Really appreciate it. I said, thank you for getting the speaker. Yeah.
You're welcome.
Yep.
Glad we were able to arrange it.